Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us. We should be getting back into the courtroom in just a few moments, so stay tuned with us. We'll continue our coverage of the Leilani Simon trial. They should be starting in a few moments. I know that court started just about a half hour ago. We are on a 30-minute delay, and I see the judge seated, so we'll go straight to the courtroom.
We are going to get started. Could you please bring in Ms. Simon? Thank you. Make sure everything is turned on. So we are now back on the record in SPCR 22-03364J6. Let the record reflect that Leilani Simon is present with her counsel, and the state is represented at their table as well. The jurors are not yet in the room. Is there anything that we need to attend to before we bring in the jurors?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Hilliard?
Nothing on behalf of the Simon judge, no.
Thank you very much. Please bring in the jurors. Okay.
All right. To let the court know, we have two witnesses for this afternoon. And then we'd like to pick up tomorrow morning with our remaining several witnesses. I hope to rest tomorrow afternoon and perhaps Thursday morning. But I might be asking to end a little early today.
That's fine.
Thank you.
No objection, Judge. I second that motion.
All right. So tomorrow morning, let's plan to start. Gosh, it's Wednesday, isn't it?
Judge's meeting. 10's fine, Judge.
All right.
If we can finish tomorrow, great. If not, we got Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
We will begin court tomorrow at 10 o'clock after the 9 o'clock judge's meeting. Are they going to knock at the door? Yes, ma'am. When they're ready? Yes. Okay. We can't do anything without them. Oh my. Okay. Well, I think we should have given the jurors an opportunity to pull it together after lunch. You know, I'm going to step off the bench. Please let Solomon know when the jurors are ready. Thank you.
Alrighty, so just bear with us. They're taking a little break, as you heard, to go and get the jurors. So we will be back once they return.
I think we're ready to begin. Please bring the jurors in. We're back on the record.
Jurors enter.
All right, very good. All right, please have a seat. Welcome back from lunch. So, was everyone able to comply with my instructions not to discuss the case, not to research the case? Yes, ma'am. All right, excellent. So let's begin. Mr. Dean?
Kimberly Johnson.
Please put and raise your right hand. Do you have interest to give the court and jury in the trial of this issue should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Step this way, ma'am. Have a seat, please.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Mr. Dean?
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, I'm Kimberly Johnson. I work for the Federal Bureau of Investigation as a forensic accountant.
Is that different from a special agent?
Yes, no gun, no badge.
What does a forensic accountant do? What do you do day to day?
I'm tasked with using financial information as it relates to criminal investigation.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Mostly bank records, titles, tax records, whatever may come in, invoices from a company, just trying to put the picture together from the money side of an investigation.
So is it fair to say that day to day you're in an office analyzing like Excel spreadsheets and things like this?
Yes, in an office behind a computer.
How long have you been doing that for the FBI?
Just short of 27 years.
Do you have any collateral duties or I guess like side responsibilities at the FBI?
I do. I'm collateral duty is a member of the evidence response team.
And what is the evidence response team?
We are a team that goes out for searches and crime scenes, and we're responsible for collecting and packaging evidence that's discovered.
How did you as a forensic accountant become a member of the evidence response team?
It was voluntary, and like I said, it's collateral to my regular job. And me personally, I was motivated after 9/11.
Is it a volunteer duty or service on the ERT?
Yes, it's absolutely voluntary.
In your capacity as a member of the evidence response team, were you involved in the landfill search looking for Quentin Simon?
I was.
Can you tell us how you were involved initially?
Yes, initially I was just a searcher called up to help work the lines. Later in the search, I had a few days where I acted as team leader.
And what does the team leader do out there?
Basically responsible for managing the search and the personnel on that day.
And were you the team leader on duty at the Waste Management Superior Landfill on the day that the search team out there found Quentin?
I was.
I'd like to ask you a little bit about the layout of the landfill search. What was the search area? Can you describe that?
It was basically the area that was identified in the landfill where they were digging the trash out for us to search.
Like sort of a hillside
Yeah.
of garbage?
Yes.
And what was the search deck?
The deck was where they actually spread the garbage that they'd taken out of the search area. They spread it along the deck so we could go through and manually search through it for what we were looking for.
So aside from the search area, kind of up on the hill and the search deck where everything was being laid out to be searched, what else was out there? What was the rest of the setup like?
So, kind of looking at it from the perspective of walking to the deck, there was a road that we would enter in from, and
Yeah,
then
before you go,
Sorry.
is that the perimeter road that kind of goes around the landfill?
that's correct.
Okay, go ahead.
So, there was kind of a driveway, is how I would describe it, that we would, after we got our PPE on and such, we would walk up onto the deck. So from the perspective of walking towards the deck, on the right side, they had tents and chairs set up for us to be able to take breaks without actually leaving the search deck and having to take all of our equipment off. To the left, there was an area where the deck boss and the logistics people and the safety officers kind of observed us as we were searching. So that's kind of how it's split.
What about the forensic anthropologist? Was there a forensic anthropologist out there?
There was, and she was, so turning around and walking towards the road, she was kind of, as you exited the driveway, she was on the other side of the road set up in a tent. Then to the right of her, there was a tent with all of the protective equipment. That's where we would grab our stuff. To the right of that, there was a tent where we could sit and put our suits on and everything. There was drinks in there. That's where they would set out the lunches for us to grab. And then to the left of the tent, there was another supply trailer. So that was like extra supplies. So the logistics guys would bring them from there to the tent if we were running low on gloves or whatever.
I'd like to ask you a few questions about the different personnel that was or were out there, and their different roles. You've talked about the team leader role a little bit. As a team leader, what sort of gear did you have on a day-to-day basis?
Pretty much the same as searchers. I dressed out in regular PPE. In addition, we had buckets or those silver like catering trays that we would collect items that people found while they were searching that would then go to the forensic anthropologist to scan through.
So you had a bucket or a tray?
Yeah, like the Home Depot, like the 5-gallon bucket, or like I said, those silver catering trays.
And what would you do with the bucket or tray? Just kind of walk me through how that would work.
Okay. We didn't want to leave the deck because we were suited up. So there'd be a runner that would come up and meet us kind of at that driveway area and take whatever we had collected from the line and then take it across the road to the tent where the forensic anthropologist was so she could do her screening.
What was the process of collecting material from the line? Just what did that look like? You have this bucket in your hand. What happens?
So everybody did it a little bit different, each individual. Most people, when they got dressed, we called it a bone bag on there. They taped it to their suit and used tongs to pull out things that they thought were of interest, and it would go to the bone bag. It saved you from having to call somebody over every time you found something. So at the end of the line, when we were done, it was considered complete. Then we'd go along that line and basically dump everything into the buckets out of the trays and then send them across the road.
All right, so it's the individual searchers that have the bone bag, and then at the end of that line, all that gets dumped in the bucket and run to the anthropologist across the road, if I understand you correctly?
Correct.
Okay. Tell me about the searchers. Who were these people, and what were they wearing and using in terms of equipment?
Okay. We had representatives from federal, state, and local departments. I think over the 5-week span, there was over 75 different people that came out to help us search. The PPE, it started with a pair of steel-toe boots. They were required, and then a white Tyvek suit, which is the white suits that look like paper. They're not paper. They're more like a nylon plastic, not very breathable, so pretty hot. And then we had booties over that we were duct taped around our ankles, and then a yellow like plastic bootie over that, like a taller boot on top of that. Then we had safety vest on. We were gloved up. Most people put cotton gloves on, and then what we call a nitrile glove, which is like a surgical glove. And then that was duct taped to the Tyvek suit. And then we put work gloves on top of that. And then we had boonie caps. Most people, because it has a wide brim to kind of keep the sun off of us. We were required to wear safety goggles and what we call a half face respirator. So if you can imagine like an oxygen mask is how it fits over your mouth and nose. And then it has like detachable, not reusable, throwaway filters on them. They also were hot, but it helped us keep the smell down. So, we didn't like wearing them, but it was helpful. Like I said, bone bags taped on our hips.
I think you mentioned tongs earlier. Was there any other sort of implement that you all would use for the actual searching of the lines themselves?
Yes, we used, I think they call them fireman's rakes, but they're big 6-foot-ish long, heavy kind of rakes. And they've got 3 or 4 prongs, like wide prongs on the end, to kind of rake through the trash and pick out stuff as you're going through it. So.
Now, we're going to see some pictures, but I just want to ask you, what does trash look like as you're going through it on the search deck. We all throw away bags of trash and they get carried away from our house and then they're gone. But what does it look like by the time that you're out there on the search deck going through it?
It doesn't look like a pile of bags. By the time it got to the point where we saw it, it had been shredded and mashed and mixed with dirt. So it's kind of just a gray, muddy looking field. You do occasionally find an intact bag or an intact piece of furniture or a roll of carpet, but most of the things that we found were broken in pieces. And if we would find like an intact bag, you'd get together with, another person or two other people to kind of rip those bags open to make sure that there wasn't anything that was of interest in there, or unroll the carpet rolls. Or
Now, were there heavy equipment operators out there helping you all conduct the search?
there were.
Can you tell me what kind of gear they were using and what they were doing with it?
So there was an excavator on the hill at the search area that would scoop the trash out and put it in a dump truck. And then once the dump truck was full, they would drive it up down to the deck and then kind of bounce along and kind of dump the trash out in kind of a line. And then there was a smaller excavator that came along and kind of spread it so it wasn't quite so deep, spread it thin, so it was a little bit easier to get through because it's pretty heavy.
And once the excavator had come and sort of spread it out on the deck, what do you call that?
I called it a line. I don't know if people may have called it different things, but I just referred to it as a line.
Okay. Other personnel, you mentioned the forensic anthropologist at this point. I think this person has come up. Who was this person? Not necessarily the name, but where they came from and how they got there.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not good with names. She was, my understanding, contracted from Georgia Southern University, and she would come out to provide that expertise, and she would normally bring one or two of her students with her to help her with the task.
And what was the purpose she was serving out there? What was her function?
She was the subject matter expert on the bones and things that we may find. In our roles, I'm no expert at the difference between what this bone looks like and what this bone looks like. So we picked up the bones, and then she let us know, if they were of any importance or not. So.
Okay. So it's like a screening role.
A screening role, for sure.
Might be of human origin. This definitely isn't, that kind of thing.
Correct.
Now, just to be clear, this is a different person in a different role from the forensic anthropologist at the lab.
Oh,
that we've
yes.
heard from in this trial.
Yes.
Okay. Why do you need this forensic anthropologist out there conducting this screening role? Do you find a lot of bones in the landfill?
You do.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we probably, to say hundreds of bones a day would probably not be exaggerating. If you can imagine every chicken wing place, barbecue restaurant, animals that were disposed of, there's a lot of bones.
And can you describe kind of how the screening process would work from emptying the contents of the bone bags into the bucket onward?
Yeah, like I said, the runner would come and get them off the deck from us, take them to the forensic anthropologist. Wasn't really involved in her actual process, but she would go through everything that we had picked up and determine if there was anything of a human nature, and if not, then it's my understanding that they were then thrown away.
Now, I'd like to ask you just about kind of the workflow of the day, starting with everybody getting together to go to the landfill on a given morning.
Okay.
Can you tell us about that? What did a day look like?
Sure. We usually started the day pretty early. Like I said, when we first got started, it was pretty hot during the day, so the earlier we could get started, the better. We would rally at Scottsdale Park, and that was where the command post was set up, and there was a building where we could sit around and get ready for the day. About 7:30, we'd try to start a briefing. Usually it started with the search team leader that would just brief up from anything that had occurred the day before. If we had anybody there that was new, kind of explain what we were there for, what we were looking for. After that, usually a member of the case investigative team would brief us up on any investigative updates. And then we would hear from the logistics guys and anything we needed to know about the deck, the heavy equipment operators, anything that was going on with the search area or deck. And then the safety officers would just, again, remind us to keep our safety glasses on. Those were really hot, so a lot of times you just want to tip them up a little bit to breathe. And then to make sure everybody's staying hydrated, not falling out on the line or anything. After the brief was done, we'd load up in a couple of transport vehicles that would take us to the actual, up the road and to the search area where we would dress out. We would get all our PPE on and usually try to be like on the line between 8:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning. We would search lines until about lunchtime and then take our lunch break. At the point we took our lunch break, like I said, there was that area where we could like grab something to drink without getting out of our PPE. But for lunch break, we had to be cut out. So if you can imagine somebody with a razor cutter kind of down your back, kind of cutting you out of these things so you can throw it away. Do the lunch and then repeat after lunch, putting all the PPE back on, headed back to the line until we quit for the day. Sometime between 4 and 5 usually is what we aimed for. It all depended on where we were in amount of lines, what the daylight was doing, that sort of thing. If there was anything special happening, we would, again, get cut out. We'd have a brief if there was anything that we needed to relay for that from the day at that point, and transport back to the park, and everybody would break for the day.
How many days a week was the landfill search conducted?
The first week it was only 4 days because they didn't start till Tuesday. The next 2 weeks I think was 5. The week after that was only 3 because there was a tropical storm coming in, so I shut it down I think Wednesday of that week. And then the final 2 weeks I think are, if I'm getting my dates messed up, but the rest of them were 5-day weeks. So it was a 5-day week except for the beginning and the tropical storm week.
Now, in terms of the searchers out on the deck walking the lines, was that an all-volunteer duty?
Absolutely.
How long did it take to get into this PPE in the morning initially and then after lunch?
Probably 30 minutes by the time you're taped up and you help tape your buddies up. And so it is probably a 30-minute process.
At some point, did a photographer with the FBI come out there and take a series of photographs to kind of memorialize the search and what it looked like?
Yes,
Do you see in front of you an exhibit marked as State's Exhibit 76?
I do.
Can you flip through this and let me know when you're ready to talk about it?
Okay.
Is this a selection of photographs of the landfill search operation?
Yes.
Do they fairly and accurately depict the operation as it appeared to you?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move these in as State's Exhibit 76.
No objection, Your Honor.
this first photo here, can you describe where the photographer is standing as this picture is taken?
Yeah, kind of at the base, I talked about the driveway that we walked up to get to the deck. So she's like kind of to the right of that driveway. So the deck would be the upper left. The search area would be, upper right. The search area is on the left there with that excavator. And then the road, these guys here are kind of standing on the inside of the road.
So this is like that perimeter road that runs along the outside of the landfill?
Yes.
Okay. This next photograph, you described earlier, there's an excavator up in the search area that would scoop out trash and load it into a dump truck to be taken down to the search deck. Is that what we're seeing here, this excavator and this dump truck?
Yes.
And this guy working this excavator and this other fellow standing out here, were they law enforcement or did they work for the landfill?
They were employees of the landfill. I believe one of the heavy equipment operators was from Chatham County Parks and Rec. And I think he just volunteered because he was knowledgeable in heavy equipment operations. So.
This next photograph, what are we looking at here?
Those are the boots. So you basically have the booties and the tie, that's the white Tyvek I was talking about, and then these yellow covers went over that, and that's what we were all duct taping with.
Okay, so you got
There'd be a
steel-toed boots under this this gray booty here.
Correct.
Over the gray booty, you get the yellow rubber or plastic.
Yes, and the bone bags we used, those were actually the bags that the booties came in. So we kind of multi-purpose that. So about the size of a loaf of bread, if you can imagine that size of bag. So.
The next photograph, is this on that perimeter road?
Yes,
And then we can see the search area on the far right there.
correct.
All right, and that, would that driveway thing
Probably
be
be
just off frame to
To
the right?
the right, yeah.
Okay. What is happening in this picture?
It looks like we're suiting up to go back in probably after lunch, giving as bright as it is.
About how many searchers on any given day?
It varied a lot more in the beginning, like could be close to 40 in the beginning, and then, you know, as people had to split off and go do other things. Never less than 20 though, probably 20, 25, 30 on average.
The next picture, what are we seeing here? What's happening in this picture?
This is us coming onto the deck and just kind of getting perused by the safety officers to make sure that we had everything on that we were supposed to have.
The next picture?
Yeah, those are the fireman's rakes I was talking about, and they had a tarp that we could lay them on when we took breaks, and at lunch we could leave them on the deck without having to carry them out of the deck.
This next picture?
Yeah, that's the line, that's the process. It just lined up in a straight line, or tried to, and then everybody just kind of took their 2 or 3 foot section and just kind of worked their way to the other side of the line.
Now, zooming in on this, is this what we're looking at here, this garbage on the ground? Is this more or less representative of what the stuff looked like as y'all were going through it?
Yes,
What did it smell like out there?
it smelled bad. Like I said, the respirators helped, but you'd go home and it would still be in your nose. Some people would put vapor rub underneath their nostrils to kind of help with it. So you cut yourself breathing out of your mouth as much as possible. So it's nasty.
What are we seeing in this picture here?
That's one of the buckets. Like I said, some people use the bone bags. Some people, we'd have buckets along the way that they could throw something into. And again, the process, it kind of varied by day. And like in this case, I don't know why, but we would start in a line and we would end up in a circle almost every single time. I'm not really sure how it happened. Tried to stay in straight and always ended up in a circle, but I guess it worked. So
This searcher right here, who appears to be, I don't know, tossing something into the bucket, perhaps. Do you recognize this person?
I'm just saying, but from the blonde ponytail, I would think it might be Officer Zerke, but I'm not sure since we all kind of look the same in our get-ups there. So
Fair enough. Do you remember Officer Zerke being out there?
I do.
What do you remember about her involvement?
She had a knack for finding bones. She almost always had the fullest bone bag at the end of a line. She just had the eye to catch everything, I felt like. So she was really good at what she did. So
What about her level of commitment to this operation?
well, she was one of them that was there every day. So that says something. She was never sick or had to call off or anything.
Was that typical? I mean, were there people that were involved in this for a period of time and then, tapped out after some days and unvolunteered, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know if it was so much unvolunteered, but this comes up in the middle of people's lives unexpectedly. So you might have a work commitment, you might have a personal commitment. But her and a few others from Chatham County PD were there every single day.
Now, this next photograph with this series of trays here, who are we looking at here?
Yeah, I believe that's the forensic anthropologist. Again, with the mask, it's kind of hard to tell, but and that's the catering tray I was talking about. So she would go through those. I separate things out, take a look, analyze it, screen it. That was what she was there for.
And just to be clear, this is not an image of Quentin's remains. This is just like
No,
a
yeah,
given
it looks
day.
like, just a regular, I say regular, but just the results of a line search.
Okay. And she's about to go through those and
Looks like it, yes.
determine that none of them are Quentin.
Yes.
I'd like to ask you about November 18, 2022, the day that Quentin was found. You said earlier you were the team leader out there that day.
I was.
What do you remember about how that unfolded?
Started off like a regular search day. It was much cooler than it had been, which everybody it was a relief not to be so hot. It was also the last day we were going to search before shutting down for that Thanksgiving holiday. It had been determined that we weren't going to work that week. We were going to suspend the search until after Thanksgiving. So it was kind of the last day and then everybody was going to get a break.
And when did that day go from being the normal kind of tedious day like you'd been having to something different?
About midday, it was before lunch. Someone signaled from the line that if you found something that seemed unusual, you always kind of like raised your hand and gave a heads up. And this occurred that morning, late morning, indicated that they had found something that didn't look like everything else we've been seeing. It appeared to be a piece of a skull.
After that was found, what do you remember about how things played out next?
That was taken to the forensic anthropologist right away. We finished that line that we were working on, took everything that we had collected to the forensic anthropologist, cut out, and went ahead and went to lunch. And I don't remember if it was during lunch or right after we went back after lunch to start the next line. But the forensic anthropologist confirmed that she thought we did have human remains. So we continued the search of the line, and then at some point they determined that we needed to respread the line we did before lunch and search it again.
All told, how many different lines do you remember Quentin being found over?
I think just a couple, because we did, I want to say 2 after that we didn't find anything else in.
And is that how y'all decided kind of you were at a stopping point?
Yeah, I think it was that. The forensic anthropologist, I think, determined that there was enough that had been collected to do, identification purposes. It was getting late. We were running out of daylight. So I think the people that decided those things decided that we were at a place where we could stop.
About how long do you remember it being from, the moment that very recognizable piece of skull is found to when y'all finished up and were done for that day?
It was late. It was getting dark because it was after the time change. I don't think we got back to the parking lot till after 5. I drove home in the dark, so we were out there quite a while because there was a lot of things to do. On top of what we had found, we were breaking down for the week, closing things up and stuff. So
at some point during that sort of ongoing process of finding Quentin that day, did the case agents show up to take custody of Quentin and package his remains?
yes, I think all of the investigative agents were there by mid-afternoon at the latest.
And was this your last day at the landfill, or did you have to come back at any point for anything else?
It was the last search day, as it turned out. We didn't know that at the time. The scene was not closed because we didn't know for sure what had been found. But after that was confirmed, preliminary confirmation that it was likely Quentin's remains, then we went back the Monday after Thanksgiving, which I think was the 28th of November, and we broke the scene down at that point.
One moment, please. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hilliard?
I don't have any questions for this witness, Judge.
All right, may she be excused?
Yes.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And so the state may call its next witness.
Sophia Zerke.
Face the clerk and raise your right hand. The evidence shall give the court and jury in the trial decision should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
This way, ma'am. You may have a seat and watch, sir.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
My name is Sophia Zerke,
That is the last name that I'm going to have to ask you to spell.
Zurkee.
And I take,
Mr. Dean, make sure you have your mic on.
thank you. I take it you are a Chatham County police officer?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been with the Chatham County
I
Police
have been
Department?
with the Chatham County Police Department since September of 2021.
Did you work at any other police departments prior to joining the Chatham County Police Department?
Yes, sir.
Where was that?
The Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office in Kansas.
Okay. How'd you end up coming here from Kansas?
I moved here. Being in law enforcement, it's a very stressful job. So Georgia offers a lot to do outside of work, the ocean, the beach. So it's very beautiful here.
Now, you're here today because you're the first person to find a piece of Quentin, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, I'd like to show you slide 8 from State's Exhibit 3, which has already been admitted into evidence. This has been introduced and admitted into evidence as a still frame from Sergeant Stewart's body-worn camera from the initial response to 535 Buckhalter Road on October 5th. Is that you there?
Yes, sir, it is.
Was this your beat that you were patrolling that day or no?
It was not. I was in beat 8 that day. This is considered beat 7.
And how did you end up there?
When there's a missing child, time is of the essence, so it's all hands on deck at that point. So I went over to assist with the search.
And on this day, were you involved in canvassing the neighborhood or the woods or something like that looking for Quentin?
Yes, sir.
So is it fair to say that you started looking for Quentin initially on October 5th,
Yes, sir.
day one? Later, did you become involved in the search of the landfill?
Yes, sir.
How did you become involved in that?
I asked to be a volunteer to help.
Had you heard, I presume you had heard that this was a thing that was about to start happening?
Correct.
How did you hear about it?
Our department.
And were they soliciting, like, department-wide for volunteers or what?
I can't recall on that. I just know they asked us to be some extra hands to help.
And you volunteered, you say?
Yes, sir.
Why is that?
Being one of the first on scene, I wanted to see it through and to help in any way that I could.
And going forward from that, were you involved as a searcher at the landfill?
Yes, sir.
What day did you start on? Not necessarily the date, but like, was it the first day of the landfill search?
Yes, I was there for the first day.
And were you involved throughout?
Yes.
Was there any day that search operation was going on that you weren't there?
No, sir.
Could you have gotten out of it at some point if you had wanted to?
Yes.
What was that like doing that for, I don't know, 5 weeks or whatever it was?
It was a lot. It was mentally, emotionally, and physically draining every single day.
Now, I'd like to draw your attention to November 18, 2022, the day that Quentin was found out there. What do you remember about the morning?
From what I can recall, it was like every other morning it started out. We have a briefing, kind of talk about how the day's going to go. We get ready when we start searching. Would you like me to kind of go through, our attire, be more specific in that aspect? Or?
No, we've had that with a previous
Okay.
witness. So I guess let me ask you this. In the morning, was it a normal day?
Yes, sir.
What do you remember about the point where it became not a normal day?
I was just raking through the garbage, and then I had observed a white small object could fit in the palm of my hand. It looked like bone to me, so I remember seeing my Lieutenant Foster, because they were all on the side, and contacting him, and they came over and removed it.
I'd like to approach with It's been introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit 77.
And 77 has been admitted, is that correct?
It has, Judge.
Okay.
That was the one.
Can you look through here and tell me if you recognize the object that you're describing?
Yes, I do.
Is that it on the first page there?
Yes, sir.
Can you pull this out and display it to the jury, please?
Yes. This is the object that I was talking about.
What do you remember happening from there?
I just remember notifying my lieutenant and then coming over and collecting it.
And then after that?
We continued to search.
And did you yourself find any more items of note?
I don't recall because really any items that we found that we thought were potentially bones, we would put in the buckets for them to collect and to get tested. So whether or not specifically I found any other items that were tested,
Yeah,
I'm not-
it's a difficult thing for you to
Right.
answer, right? Let me ask you this. After having been out there for weeks, going through line after line, tell me what it felt like to see that little piece of Quentin's skull and pick it up and realize what it was.
it was heartbreaking.
Was it rewarding also? I have no further questions, Your Honor.
I think
I don't have any questions, Judge.
Wait if I'm going to close the door. Okay. And so at this point, Mr. Dean, does the state have another witness to call today?
One moment, please, Your Honor. Not today, Your Honor.
Thank you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have an early day. Never quite know what we're going to have, but today is an early day. We're going to stop here. I'm going to excuse you for the evening with the instructions that you probably know by heart now. Don't discuss the case. Don't do any research. Don't look at any news. Don't observe any news. Don't consume any news. All right? And I wish you all a good night.
Jury's exiting.
Thank you. Everyone, please have a seat. Before we go, I do have the material witness arrest warrant. I'm going to dismiss both, or just one?
Just the one for Craig Weston.
Thank you. Mr. Bryant, I'm going to hand that back down to you. I will dismiss this one, and I am going to do it the rough way. dismiss the material witness arrest order for Craig Weston. The other one remains. Okay. So, is there anything that we need to turn our attention to, first turning to the state?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Hilliard?
Not that I'm aware of it now.
All right, very good. We will resume court tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And with that, we're in recess until then.
All right, everyone, as you heard, the court is in recess. Just to recap a little bit about what we heard today. Today was mostly about the landfill and the landfill search for Quentin Simon's remains. We started off hearing from Joe Matz of Waste Pro Management, who talked about the truck that would have dumped waste from Azalea Mobile Home Park at the landfill. He talked about the route, how that route is logged and how that truck goes back and forth. But then we also heard from a man named Donald Johnson with Waste Management. He's the senior district manager, and he talked about what happens at landfills, how waste is processed, how the landfill works, how everything goes in and what comes out. He talked with the prosecution about how that works, and he even they showed a short video about how landfills works. But we also learned more about what went into the search of the landfill and how that impacted the Waste Management's landfill and operation. So here's a bit of his testimony from earlier today. This is going to be Donald Johnson, the senior district manager of Waste Management.
Did Detective Noble ask you to do anything?
Stop placing waste in that area.
Okay. And was he referring to the tipping area or that particular landfill cell that trash was being used to, or what?
The landfill cell.
Okay. And did you do that?
That's correct.
Did that have any impact on y'all's operations?
Yes, it did.
What did y'all have to do at that point?
We had to hire a subcontractor to move our tipping for location, and that was a cost to the company.
And so following his testimony, we had a bit of a break earlier today. And when we came back from that break, we heard from the state and defense about how a certain testimony would be shown outside of the courtroom. The state bringing Craig Weston to testify, asking for his testimony to be off camera, given the nature of what he was going to testify about. The judge did ultimately decide to keep that off camera, and we played a little bit of her decision earlier today. You can check our website for more details on that. But even though that testimony was not on camera, live stream, or broadcasted anywhere, we still had reporters in the room taking down what was going on. And Flynn Snyder has been covering this trial from beginning to right now and will continue. And he was in that courtroom earlier today when Craig Weston testified. And here's what he had to say about what went on.
A brief pause in streaming the Leilani Simon murder trial after Judge Stokes ordered cameras to be cut during one witness's testimony. State prosecutors made a motion to pause broadcasting while Craig Weston, Leilani Simon's alleged drug dealer, took the stand. A special assistant district attorney argued the nature of the testimony and Weston's objection to being recorded warranted cameras being off. Simon's defense team pushed back, arguing Weston should be held to the same treatment every other witness has received. Ultimately, Judge Stokes sided with the state, ordering no video or audio recording of Weston's testimony. Prosecutors say Simon and Weston were having an intimate relationship in the weeks leading up to Quentin Simon's disappearance. Weston's testimony lasted roughly 15 minutes. He told jurors that he was not at the location prosecutors say Simon went to pick up drugs from the night before Quentin's reported disappearance. After Weston left the courtroom, live streaming resumed.
And we continued coverage, and after lunch, we heard from a couple more witnesses. We also heard from Detective Marion Lemons earlier today as well. But the last two witnesses that we heard from were actually involved in the landfill search for Quentin Simon's remains. We learned about how they prepared to search the landfill, what kind of equipment they needed, what kind of PPE they needed to put on to keep themselves safe searching through the landfill, what those days were like. We heard from Kimberly Johnson, an FBI forensic accountant who was able to help with the landfill search, but we also heard from Sophia Zerke with the Chatham County Police Department, who actually volunteered to help with that landfill search. She testified earlier today that she volunteered because she was one of the first people on the scene on October 5th when Quentin was reported missing, and she said she wanted to see it through. She was actually one of the people to find, she was the first person to find a piece of Quentin at the landfill, and she testified what that day was like for her, and it is very emotional, but we want to just play back a little bit of what she said, what it was like on November 18th, 2022.
Let me ask you this. After having been out there for weeks, going through line after line, tell me what it felt like to see that little piece of Quentin's skull and pick it up and realize what it was.
It was heartbreaking.
Was it rewarding, Leslie? I have no further questions.
I think
I don't have any questions, Judge.
And so a very emotional end to the day and of day 7 of this trial. The state did mention that they're expecting to call more witnesses tomorrow, but they are expecting to rest either tomorrow afternoon or early Thursday. So stay tuned with us with that. We know that court will start at 10 a.m. tomorrow. You can continue to recap today's happenings in the courtroom on V News at 7. That's when our Haley Bolin will break down today's events inside of the courtroom, as well as with Flynn Snyder and Shay Schrader, our reporters who've been there as well. So make sure to tune into that. Tune into our website, WTOC.com, for all of the information that we have on this case. We have a timeline that dates back to September of 2022, before Quentin was reported missing. So we are continuing to cover this trial. Make sure to stay tuned with us both on air and online. And thanks so much for joining us today. We'll make sure to check in back tomorrow. Court will start at 10 a.m., but since this live stream is delayed 30 minutes, you can expect this coverage to start at 10:30 a.m. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow.